call this meeting, this workshop to order. Let the register reflect that we have a quorum present today. Mr. Erasmo Lopez, Coach Armando Cuellar, Dr. Jaime Rodriguez, Mr. Patrick Kennedy, and myself, Mr. Nieto.
Is that loud enough? Can you hear us in there?
I think they should, because they have it right there.
No, but that's, maybe we should put that in here.
Well, they tested it.
They
before,
tested it?
yes.
So let's see.
They've been here for a while. They can hear
You
it?
good?
That's loud
Okay.
enough.
Okay.
Okay. Item number 1, public comments. Dr. Canales? We don't have any public
We
comments.
don't have any public comments.
Okay. Item number 2 is team building board training. We have House Bill 403, child abuse. We're going to have also TASB policy manual update 114, section B, local governance, and of course also gifted and talent education.
Well, good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
My name is Heriberto Villarreal. I'm the Deputy Director at Region 1. And tonight's training, it's team building training, but we're also going to cover some required trainings. Those of you that attended the legislative update training, there's some required trainings now that are required for board members. So we're going to cover those tonight as well. So we're going to do 2 different presentations. So the first one in your packet is the Lone Star Governance Framework. If you've been through the ISO training, which is the Senate Bill 1566 training, what that tells you is that as a board, during your school board meetings, you should spend 50% of your time discussing student outcomes, discussing curriculum, discussing those kinds of things. So what we're going to look at in this presentation is what that looks like in your framework.
There you go.
Okay, the board works collaboratively with the superintendent to develop the vision and student outcomes. You don't meet focus if the board does not have a vision and the board does not have goals. Oops. You do have master's focus if the goals are all student outcome goals and the student outcome goals are aligned to the vision. Where is the Weslaco ISD board on this? Have you developed student outcome goals as a board? Or presented, have they been presented to you?
We have developed goals. I think the superintendent has,
There you go.
has outlined several goals, especially in regards to the literacy of students.
When you develop, in fact, when you develop her goals, those are the goals. Those are the student outcome goals, if they're student outcome based.
Correct.
Student outcome goals are aligned with the vision. Do you have a vision for the district? And so are the goals aligned to that vision? Okay, so then you're doing good under Vision 1. Under Vision 2, the board has adopted goal progress measures aligned to each student outcome goal. You don't meet focus if the board does not have any goal progress measures, and you do meet the master's focus if the goal progress measures are student outcomes. In other words, how often and how do you monitor that you're meeting those goals? Okay, how do you ensure that that is happening in the district at a board, as a board?
A lot of times the presentations from the different,
Okay.
Whether it's English, secondary or elementary. And
Departments
benchmarks
or
and
benchmark
where
results.
we're at, and how we're improving. I know in the last one they had the masters, the meets and
Right.
approaches from the different elementaries and secondary also.
Okay, so you get that and you hear that at board meetings and you're looking at that.
In addition to that, we get weekly updates.
Correct.
Okay.
That,
Correct.
or follow-ups to anything that has been discussed, or if questions are brought up, then those are addressed and presented to us with those weekly updates.
Good. And that's what this is about, is that you're looking at that as a board and that you're asking questions and you're looking at that. The board invests at least half of its time focusing on its vision and student outcome goals at board meetings. Does that happen? Think about your board meetings. It's about half of your time. And don't get, guys, there's nothing wrong with it if you're saying no, because it's just something that you gotta work towards.
Not
Okay.
necessarily at every board meeting, but at some board meetings we do have.
We do spend a good amount of time looking at student outcomes and, okay.
I think it really depends on the type of meeting, because we have some meetings that are, admittedly, they're more business focused. Like
Right.
more, like we have a bunch of contracts in one meeting, and just the time it takes to go through the contracts, go through what we're talking about, the criteria for what we're approving and I think other times When we have little business functions, the student focuses.
I believe
And what they
that-
want you to do-
I believe that we do more than that. Because in reality, we're monitoring through our superintendent the scores of students constantly.
Correct.
And it doesn't take a meeting for us to do that.
But
I
at
mean-
meetings, but at board meetings, you know,
But it doesn't say board meetings. The board invests half of its time, yes, we do. Because, and during the president of the board and the superintendent meeting,
Right.
that conversation, and I've attended those with Mr. Nieto. I mean, that is what gets discussed constantly.
Yeah.
And then he shares that with the board.
And I think I can speak for the board. I said, you know, ultimately, when you look at the overall purpose for everything that we address, whether it be transportation or buildings or anything of that nature, it's all related to an environment conducive to learning and to provide every opportunity for our children to get the best education possible.
Right.
To and from and during the time in the classroom. So I believe that we do invest when I have the
But
time.
I think
You know, what's best for our students.
Well, we
I was
can,
talking about the meetings, but
That's-
not time.
and I think that's what I thought we were referring to as actual meetings. And I think, you know, going back to the meetings, I think, you know, we always approve, you know, these
different programs.
you know, but I think maybe we could do a better job of getting more specific information as to how those programs are helping, you know, what kind of.
And what Dr. Morales
stats.
mentioned, that under the superintendent's report, we can add whether it's benchmark, whether it's AP scores, whatever. You know, we recognize the AP students, whatever, but on the report, say, okay, this year we had so many AP scores that got fours, whatever. You know, dealing with student progress, you know. So we can add it as one of the bullets to the superintendent's report.
And we can even do like the benchmarks, and maybe your benchmarks to see how far we're on track with our academic goals, where we want our campuses to be, and how many distinctions we want. We can do like, here's who we are.
An ideal meeting should be where a lot of those kinds of things, when you're approving, we're going to buy new ACs, we're going to buy a new bus, all those should be consent items, ideally, because you want to have the majority of your discussion dealing with student outcomes and dealing with those kinds of situations, you know, hearing reports from the staff.
That's the way it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So ideally, you know, a lot of your agenda items should be consent items if it's not dealing with student outcomes. And that's just the layout of what the state is looking for in ideal boards.
Okay.
Okay. It meets masters if not less than half of the total minutes of a board authorized meeting is invested in setting and/or progressing monitoring board student outcome goals. And see, that's what they really want to see in school boards. Accountability too. The board measures and communicates, but does not interfere in progress towards the vision and student outcome goals. And based on what I'm hearing, there's a lot of communication amongst board members, but I guess the question is there interference on how the district operates and manages that throughout the day from the board? And the hope is not. That you don't interfere with what goes on the day-to-day operations of a district when the superintendent and her staff is working with student outcome goals, dealing with curriculum, dealing with those kinds of things. So that's really what they want to see. You don't meet focus if board members are unaware of low performing status. You know where your weaknesses are in the district, if any. Okay, so as a board member, you should know where we need to work on, but you also need to know where are we really achieving extremely high. So you need to know all spectrums of where you are in the district.
And that's where the support personnel presents that information at board meetings.
And the board does give us feedback, like they'll say at meetings, we'd like, you know, we really need to focus more on writing and reading and getting the scores up. So when the data is presented, the board is, good job on this, masters, you know, we're moving the needle, now we need to focus on the writing.
Right.
There you go. And so when you're looking at growth progress measures, look at the writing. You know, are we showing improvement? Are we looking at how we're doing here? So the board does not schedule progress monitoring at least 4 times a year. They want to see it more than 4 times a year. You need to look at these progress measures at least 4 times a year. The board measures and communicates but does not interfere in progress towards the vision and student outcome goals. Master's focus, the superintendent is only evaluated on the board adopted student outcome goals. You've already identified what those goals are for the superintendent, and that's all you're going to evaluate the superintendent on, nothing else. The board considers the superintendent's performance as indistinguishable from the district's performance. It needs to tie together, right? How she does needs to tie together with how the district is doing.
Exactly. Yeah.
The board completes a board self-evaluation yearly. And I don't find a whole lot of boards that do this. Ideally, you should evaluate yourselves at least once a year.
Is there an instrument?
There is an instrument, and I can share that with Dr. Canales.
Okay.
Boards, and it's a self-assessment.
Right.
And then you all just kind of say, hey, this is where we really need to work on as a board or whatever. So that's something that you all should consider.
Okay.
The board delegates to the superintendent operational authority to accomplish the vision and student outcome goals. You don't meet focus if the board receives a board packet 3 days prior to the board meeting. Okay, which is the common thing, right? 72 hours. But, and board meetings last more than 6 hours. Okay? I mean, I'm an ex-superintendent. I mean, I used to sit in board meetings till 1 in the morning.
Where?
I'm not going to say where. So
our average has been maybe in the 2 years, maybe 3 sometimes hours, maybe at the most. When we had a long agenda.
One time we might have stayed till 10.
well, you know, and you can see that when there's something critical,
Most of the
you
time
know.
it's 9 o'clock or
And a big chunk of our meetings are usually dedicated to the student, like awards.
Yeah.
Usually takes about 30
Recognitions.
minutes, so it's like 1/6 of our meeting is
That's
just
true.
awards.
That's true.
Boards are loyal to anything but student outcomes. That's not good. Okay? When you want to focus on, okay, who are we hiring for this position instead of what's important, the student outcomes, then that's not good. Okay, you meet masters if no more than 3 discussions topics at any board meeting. I know that's kind of difficult, but that's the reason why they want a lot of your agenda items put in consent. Okay, because if it's something that, you know, if you get your packet ahead of time, you've studied the packet, and if there's a question, you've called the district and you've asked questions about that item, when it comes to consent, you should just approve it. Because by then, hopefully your questions have been answered prior to the board meeting. Your discussion topics should be about student outcomes, presentations, about, you know, those important things in the district. You know, because at the end of the day, the district gets its rating about student outcomes.
Now, at times, and I pulled some items on the meetings because I want some more information for the public. Because we're approving some program or something educational that I want the district or the public to know.
Okay.
Is that a bad thing?
It's not a bad thing, but what you might want to say, if you already know the information and you're going to support the item, you can say, I did call about this item and I just want to say that whatever you want to say.
And I think you do whenever you say.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that.
You know, because at least you're telling the public.
But you said not to pull anything. So how do we?
No, don't pull anything.
So how do we say it? How do we just?
When you
Because the
can, when
consent
you,
agenda,
yeah.
consent to approve.
But you can always raise your hand and say, I'd like to make a comment about this item
Without pulling.
without pulling it.
See, that's.
Okay.
I think we did that this
In the
last meeting.
discussion.
I think we did.
That's
Once we are
Yeah, because after you vote on that, you can say, I'd like to make a comment about the item that we approved. I did call and I'd like to explain this.
Instead of pulling, you just say, I'd like to make a
kind of
comment
reading
about it.
ahead here where it says no more than 3 discussion topics and then no
Uh-huh.
longer than 2 hours. That would have to like radically
Yeah.
alter our
And again, that's
technical meeting.
ideal. That's the ideal situation, but I know it is difficult.
Take about 45 minutes, just a student.
Yeah.
During discussion, I guess we could just discuss it instead of pulling it.
Right.
And they typically do not
Just-
take
you're just
student
gonna mention
recognitions
whatever
into account
wanna
for those
go
2
back.
hours.
Right.
Okay.
It's just going over the agenda items.
So then whenever I'll say not to pull consent agenda except for these 2 that we're going to discuss, you know.
Yeah.
You'd only have to pull it if you were planning on, like it was going to be defeated or something like that.
Right.
Or you're
Because they
gonna
normally
not
get
vote for
approved.
it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think we've ever not approved anything.
No,
But
it
we
was-
just
it was
talk
a-
about it because we need more information.
Right.
So we can just, instead of pulling it, we just said, I've got a question on item L.
Right,
The whole idea of getting your packet 72 hours in advance is for that reason.
right.
Because ideally, you're supposed to go over the agenda as soon as you get it. And if there's something that you want to question, that's when you call in to the district and you, hey, I have this question. Can you tell me more about it? Because it is a consent item, and I just want to know whether I'm going to support it or not.
Okay.
And again, to your point, you want the public to know about it, vote for it, and then after you vote, you can say, I'd like to make a comment about a certain item, and just say what you want to say.
Wait till after the vote?
I would, but I mean, that's really up to you.
Or
Do it in discussion.
If you're going to discuss it, yes.
Well, every time you say the motion, then you say any discussion.
Okay,
So
at that point.
I guess at that point. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask about everything now.
Oh,
Okay, no board meeting should last longer than 2 hours, and I think you all said about 3, so, I mean, you're in good shape.
the actual board
Yeah.
meeting is probably about 2 hours, because
Yeah.
The student recognitions
awards
take
takes a little bit
If you were
longer.
to subtract awards and proclamations,
And soup
things
report,
like
that
that.
doesn't have
Yeah.
to be there either.
Right.
That we just do.
No more than 3 discussion?
And the
Uh-huh.
proclamations.
Ideally.
Oh, yeah, proclamations take some time too.
Because those 3 discussions should be, ideally, should be student outcome discussions.
How do boards do it? Where, for example, I think what takes up time, like at the most previous meeting, we had superintendent's report and we had some just discussion on the items like about attendance, enrollment, and scores. But then we have construction issues that need to be taken up. How do the boards do it when they handle that to focus more on the student achievement portion?
Well, and it depends on the construction situation. I mean, if it's a contentious one, sometimes you want to bring legal, into this or whatever. You have to address those. And from what I've seen from other boards is that, I mean, they deal with it. I mean, because that is most construction issues are pretty contentious, And so do what you normally would do. I mean, you're going to ask questions, you want to refer items to the attorney, whatever you want to do. But if it's a simple item as, we're going to approve payment for this phase of construction, well, for the most part, you're going to approve that. So every construction issue may be a little different. So, but if it's something that is hindering the district, have those discussions. You have to. Yeah.
So some of the discussion action items that we have, like a lot of them are final completion, right?
Yeah.
So some of those
Change
that we
orders.
get, and maybe some change orders. Some of them we may want to consider in the future,
Yeah.
putting them in consent.
Consent.
But then again, too, I think they're in discussion and action because we made a commitment to our students and our staff in the community that we're going to get these things done when we prioritize. So I think that goes back to your point that sometimes we have them there so that we show.
That we're making progress
Right,
towards
and
what
then
we
we're
told the
happy
public
that
we're
we're
going to
gonna
do.
The other concern or the other thing that could come up at a point is that if we start putting a lot of stuff just on consent agenda, then we're gonna not transparent. So that's one of the fears that I know that we all have, that we want to be as clear as we can be with anything that deals with big sums of money or that the board's making a decision.
Well, folks, if y'all are having 2-3 hour board meetings and you're still having those kinds of discussions, that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Okay. What I'm saying is that, again, based on the framework from the state, is that ideally you want to dedicate a good chunk of your meeting towards student outcomes. Okay. But certainly you got to operate the way your community wants you to operate as well too. You want to be transparent. You want to have the discussions that you feel you need to have. But just make sure that you dedicate a good chunk of your time to discussing student outcomes. Okay. So that you're aware. And that you're also monitoring what's going on in the district. It shows the public that you're monitoring what's going on in the district as well. For the district and, addressing the superintendent's goals. Okay? Again, all consent agenda that are eligible items are on the consent agenda. Okay? And I think Dr. Canales mentioned, there's some things that I don't want to put on the consent because there's things that we need to discuss. So, yeah, certainly. Consent agenda items may be requested to be removed no later, that's just ideally, 72 hours before the board meeting. The board promotes the vision. So you know what your vision is for Weslaco ISD. You know, how do you as a board promote that? You know, how do you do that? How do you promote the vision of the district?
One way is that we have our superintendent goes out to every single school, and some of the board members accompany her. I have on some of the occasions. And she has what's called coffee conversations.
There you go.
And we invite the public, the parents, and at every meeting she brings out the vision.
Yep.
And discusses it and explains it and talks to everybody, all the parents.
That's perfect.
And I think that's a great way to, and I think there's some posters also that we spread out, we send out, and on some letterheads also that it shows our vision.
And on our website.
Yeah, and on our website also.
Good. The board does not meet focus if the board has not arranged for any community engagement, which you said you do, activities promoting the vision of the district. And your master's focus is the board has hosted a community meeting. It's exactly what you said.
Yeah.
To discuss progress towards student outcome goals during the previous 12-month period. And I think you mentioned that happens on a regular basis
The
here.
last 2 years.
Yeah.
Right? We started with coffee conversation. 3 already?
This is the third year.
Oh, okay. The last 3 years.
Third year.
Well, actually, this is the fourth year.
Did I skip one? This thing's not working with me.
Every school gets it.
Bring your parent, shows up.
Choice of clothes. Give them raffle of bike.
And choice of clothes too. They'll come. They'll make them come.
I'm sorry, this thing kind of.
You know, there's a school district that gives away a car
Oh, yeah. What are they, guys?
Attendance.
to the attendants for the seat.
At the end of the year.
Okay, unity. The board works collaboratively with the superintendent to lead the district towards the vision and student outcome goals. You don't meet focus if the board has not adopted board operating procedures.
You got it? We got it.
And I know you have them because I've seen them. So kudos to you guys for doing that. That you do have board operating procedures. Board members voted on an item of conflict of interest. Okay? So in other words, if there's something that pertains to you personally, you shouldn't vote on it, right? Because it's a conflict of interest.
And
You shouldn't do that.
Normally the board member
Will abstain or...
abstain from the voting or discussion.
The board has not received progress reports. Okay? So I think you all mentioned that. You all get reports at every board meeting on how, on weekly also.
Right.
So you all do that. You master focus if all board members have all met training requirements. Well, tonight you're getting 3 hours, so that's good. Okay?
So Dr. Jaime, you're gonna have 3 more.
I was okay already.
Board has received quarterly progress reports, and you all get them on a weekly basis.
Right?
No board member has given operational advice or instructional to staff. In other words, you're not micromanaging.
Correct.
You're not telling people what to do in the district. Board members agree that they are responsible for student outcomes. You are responsible because you are the ones that approve the goals.
Right.
And so ultimately, the board is responsible for that. Effective school boards. They are committed to a vision of high expectations for student achievement and quality instruction and define clear goals towards the vision. They have strong shared beliefs and values about what is possible for students and in their ability to learn and the district's ability to teach all students at high levels. Are students outcomes driven, spending less time on operational issues and more time focused on policies to improve student outcome goals? Effective school boards have a collaborative relationship with staff in the community and establish strong communication structure to engage all stakeholders in setting district achieving goals. How often do school boards come and pat staff on the back, for doing a good job?
Actually, at every meeting and
You
depends
recognize staff members, or if you're in the district or you're in one of the buildings, you go around and you can, thank the staff for what they do and all that. It's important that they see.
The little gatherings during the seasonal events count,
Oh,
because
yeah.
we invite the
All staff.
all staff to come and join, you know,
Right.
in festivities, and those of us that can be here are here in that capacity to
Correct.
greet and.
There you go.
thank
And then
them for job they're
the
doing.
convocation,
Yeah.
The beginning of the
That's
year,
right.
at the beginning of the year, get everybody motivated, get everybody.
maybe at the end of the year, do you all do an end of the year, you know, function?
Not really, no.
I don't think
Other than
we-
graduation.
Yeah, just graduation.
Graduation. Effective school boards are data savvy. They embrace, monitor, and use data to drive continuous improvement. So that you look at data. I mean, and obviously you hear percentages all the time. You know, we've gone up 10% or whatever. What does that really mean? And so do you really understand what that data means?
Well, now it's easier because we asked personnel to color code it. So
Okay.
anything that was a positive.
It's
is in
graphs
green.
and all that.
It's all in green, for say the
Good.
grade level.
Good.
So it's easier for us to see it and say, oh, we did very well in every area, whatever.
Good. Effective school boards align resources, including professional development, to meet district goals. You approve a budget at the beginning of every year, okay? You got to understand that that budget is for everything that goes on in the district. But professional development is a big piece of that because especially now that House Bill 3 came in, there's a lot of new changes.
Yep.
And so you need to make sure that you allocate resources to allow staff to get professional development to meet the needs of the kids. And so it's important that you approve those things as a board. Effective school boards, they lead as a united team with the superintendent. It's a team of 8, right? Each from their respective roles with strong collaboration and mutual trust. That you respect each other. That doesn't mean you have to vote, everybody has to vote 7-0 on every item. But you, as a board, you should respect whatever the majority of the board votes on and support that. Because that's just democracy. And that you work together with the superintendent to achieve all those goals. An effective school board takes part in team development and training, which is what you're doing right now. Okay? Effective school boards align all district programs to the board adopted vision and goals. And that's where the team of 8 comes in, because you've developed the goals. Now it's up to the superintendent to go back and make sure that curriculum is in line with the vision that you all have set out, that your career and technology programs are all in line, your special ed programs, your migrant program, every single program in the district is aligned with the vision of the district. So, an effective superintendent upholds high expectations for all stakeholders, including her own professional behavior. An effective superintendent exhibits expertise in the various instructional, managerial, legal, financial, and personnel issues he or she faces on a daily basis. That's a big job, right? A superintendent, to oversee a district, especially the size of Weslaco, you know, to know everything that goes on and to be able to deal with action items on a whim. Because I can tell you, as an ex-superintendent, you get that phone call, you got to act quickly, and everything falls on you. And that she communicates with the board, right? That she keeps the board informed, knows what's going on and what situations are occurring. So the expertise, I don't know that Dr. Canales is an expert in every single one of them, but I'm sure she knows who to call within the district to say, hey, I need assistance with this. Help me with this one, because this situation has occurred. So they have to know who to call, when to call, and how to respond, and then how to communicate with you. So it's a big job.
And I want to add that, yes, she does a very, very good job and very rounded on all the education and all that, everything she needs to know. Not only does she have a present board superintendent, yes, a school superintendent on her board, but she also has a present high school principal on her board. You know, so, you know, I'm not in education. My line of business is not education, so I'm not that well versed in it. But these guys, the superintendent and the principal, they're right there, and if there was anything that wasn't
Kosher.
up to par, they would immediately say, no, hey, wait a minute, something's not right.
Right.
And there's no red flags being raised. There's no You know, so yes, we have a great
As
superintendent.
ex-educator.
Yes.
Ex-educator, coach, and
Yeah.
another educator right there, and an attorney,
Yeah.
you know,
So-
and then we have another educator, and I mean,
But
One of her best attributes is the ability to cultivate talent in her executive board that she has. She's got a good talent, she keeps them. And, you know, we've had some issues in some of the departments in the last few years, and she's managed to arrange the executive board to make sure the leadership is addressing those. And I think it's gotten better over the last couple of years.
Good point.
good job, Dr. Canales.
Very far.
But that's, you know, you've got a good board that supports that. It makes the job so much easier for the superintendent to do her job or his job, whoever the superintendent is. So it's very key for a superintendent to have a very strong supportive board that works together. That's not afraid to question issues, that's not afraid to give direction, but also and hold the superintendent accountable. But it gives that individual that much more at ease to be able to do their job. So that's a good thing for this district. And the results are showing. And effective superintendents must plan, implement, and evaluate the success of the district instructional and assessment program. She has to evaluate. When they get those STAR results, she has to look at those results and meet with her team and re-evaluate it and then bring that information to the board and say, okay, this is how we did, and this is our plan to moving forward, right? And so that's the cycle of things.
and that's a constant.
Constant. Effective superintendents, they involve stakeholders in realizing the district's vision. Effective superintendents communicates timely, relevant information with great clarity and frequency so that the mission vision of the district is understood and supported. As you mentioned, you have those coffee at the campuses. That's the perfect opportunity to constantly communicate that vision and do that with the staff, with the community, with the parents, whoever is coming to those coffees. An effective superintendent aligns district systems, operations, and organizational performance to the district's mission and vision. Micromanagement. Micromanagement with excessive control, getting involved in the work of others without consulting them. That's the definition. School board micromanagement occurs when a school board or an individual school board member tells the superintendent or the staff how to do their jobs. Does the job of the superintendent or that of the staff? School board micromanagement occurs when a school board or individual school board member cannot differentiate between governance and management. Governance is when you come together and you make decisions and you approve what's being recommended, right? Management is not what boards do. That's what superintendents do. That's what principals do. That's what assistant superintendents do. So just know that what your role is as a board member and what the district staff's role is. Now I want to show this video, and I hope this doesn't happen here in Weslaco.
Man, look at this place. This is awesome. Since we got on the board, have we not made some changes? We got the football coach we want. We got this field. We got this facility. It is going to be an awesome. We got to support these kids.
We do. We have to be there. We have to be there every Friday night. We got to do it.
Let's get loud in the stands. Let's get the crowd rolling. But the main thing is we got to support this program. This is our field and our coach.
It's our. It is our coach.
We made a difference since we got on this board, baby. Yes, we did. Oh, I can't wait on this. 7th grade, here we go. Come on, 7th grade. Yeah, baby. Hey, I have been looking forward to this for so long, guys.
Just what we talked about. Just what we thought was going to happen.
We got this group together. You got elected last year. We got on this year. This is great. Come on, Scooter, you can do it.
Uh-oh. Different comments.
If I had hair, I'd pull it out. This is bad. Did y'all know it was going to be this bad? I thought we had athletes in the 7th grade. What is our coach doing? That's our guy. Remember, that's our guy. I know, but still, dadgummit.
Hang in there. That's good.
That's good. He's the right one. I'm done.
I can't even believe it. That's
Who is it? You said you checked his references.
I know.
It's the first 7th grade game. I tell you what, come Monday morning, I'm in that office.
I'm in there. I can't even believe it. God.
Monday morning, I'm going. Are y'all going with
Yes,
me?
we'll be
Better
there.
believe it.
That's
Monday
3.
morning.
We get 2 more, we're in.
One more.
Oops. Micromanagement. That doesn't happen here. The undermining of authority of the superintendent, it creates staff confusion. When board members begin to micromanage, it creates confusion. Dissension between the board and the superintendent. You know, there are some boards that have factions, you know, you've heard of that, right? That's what micromanagement can do. The undermining of trust between a board member and between the superintendent and other board members. An investigation by the state and possible loss of the board's governance authority. You don't want to get to that point. There's a school district nearby that has happened to. Okay? We never want to get to that point.
Very nearby.
Yeah. Micromanagement is as a symptom. The board does not know how to appropriately carry out its legitimate governance and oversight authority. The board or the board member does not know the appropriate board vehicle or mechanism for addressing perceived problems or concern. If you've got a new board member, that's part of their initial training is, you know, what their role is as a board member. Those of you that, when you first came on, if you went through that training, it tells you. And so as you've got 10 years of experience, after 10 years, you should know, you know, what my role is, you know, who I should talk to, who I can talk to, and what my role is as a board member. The board and the superintendent team has no shared understanding of how the team members define and implement the separate yet interdependent leadership roles of the board and the superintendent. The superintendent should also tell the board member, hey, you're crossing the line, right? Because the superintendent does that not for any other reason but to protect the board. Because the board as a whole can get into trouble when all this can start happening. So don't jump on the superintendent if a superintendent tells you you might want to back off from that issue because you don't want to get into that situation. You know, because the superintendent is only trying to protect you as a board member. The board or the board members does not have the information from the superintendent needed to effectively perform the appropriate governance or oversight roles. The superintendent is not performing her job to the satisfaction of the board. The trust level between the board and the superintendent is low or non-existent. Some subsystems of the larger school system is not accomplishing the results expected by the board. Those kinds of situations can occur easy, okay? But just be careful that as a board you don't do that. You don't jump into the superintendent's role. And this last couple of slides here is just to give you an idea what the roles are. The board authority, you see the clock there, the top part of it. The board authority, you adopt the vision and goals. That's your role as a board. You evaluate outcomes and you adopt policies. The bottom half is the superintendent's authority. They evaluate progress, they implement plans and leadership and management, and they develop plans and regulations. And I think this is the last slide. The board's role, you adopt the vision and goals, but you communicate with the community. Coffee. You're at the HEB on a Saturday, somebody comes up to you. Talk about the good things that are going on in the district. Talk about the student outcomes. This is how we did. You evaluate results compared to the goals. You adopt policies, you approve performance objectives. That's authority from the board side. Oversight, you review progress reports according to policy. You review and adopt a budget, and you review and adopt district and campus plans. That's what you do as a board. You don't hire the coach. The superintendent's role, you collect data, assess needs, recommend goals. You prepare and distribute, look at all the things the superintendent does. Prepare and distribute reports. You collect, analyze, report evaluation results. You prepare and analyze progress reports, monitor implementation, implement plans, prepare a budget, develop plans and regulations, recommend performance objectives, and research and develop policies. Any questions?
Along the lines of micromanaging, when there are people that have concerns, we can share those concerns with the superintendent. Right?
Oh, most definitely. And that's what you should do. You know, you shouldn't tell them, don't worry, I'll take care of it. You should say, you know what, let me let the superintendent know so that she can address it. And that's it.
Correct. Bottom line.
Yeah. Okay, the next one is the required training. Unfortunately, and I say unfortunately because we have to address this, it's called sexual abuse of children. You know, it's sad, and you know, I think it's unfortunate, but it is a part of our lives now. You know, and that I'm sure has been for many years, but that we have to address this. And how do I identify that as a board? And what? So this training is just to give you an overview of what it is and what districts do to, you know, to try to assist with that. So this came from House Bill 403, the legislative update, which all of you went through. And it says that every 2 years, a trustee must complete at least 1 hour of training on identifying and reporting potential victims of sexual abuse, human trafficking, and other maltreatment of children. So what is child abuse? Child sexual abuse. It includes sexual activity with a minor. A child cannot consent to any form of sexual activity. I don't care if the child says, I'm fine with it. They cannot, legally. They cannot consent. Does not need to include physical contact. There are other forms. Exhibitionism, fondling, masturbation in the presence of a minor or forcing the minor to masturbate, obscene phone calls, text messages, digital interaction, producing, owning, or sharing pornographic images of movies of children. The most common one, I think, in schools is what's now called the sexting, right? And there's a lot of kids that do that. You know, you see the young ladies taking pictures of themselves and then sharing it, you know? And so this is what goes on, unfortunately, now with social media. Child sexual abuse. Sex of any kind with a minor, including vaginal, oral, or anal. It includes sex trafficking. It includes any other sexual conduct that is harmful to a child's mental, emotional, or physical welfare. And when a perpetrator engages with a child this way, they are committing a crime that can have lasting effects on the victim for years. So what does a perpetrator look like? A perpetrator usually is someone the child knows. They know the person. You know, it could be a neighbor, it could be a family. I know you can't read the yellow one. It says 93% of the victims know their perpetrators. It doesn't have to be an adult. It can be a sibling. It can be a friend, a family member, a school employee. It can be anyone. Okay? You don't know the perpetrator. Sometimes you don't know. What does the perpetrator look like? Abusers can manipulate victims to stay quiet about abusing using a number of tactics. They can use their position of power over the victim to coerce or intimidate the child. They can tell the child that the activity is normal. It's perfectly okay, or in that they enjoyed it. The abuser can threaten the child if the child refuses to participate or plans on telling another person. And child abuse is not only physical violation, it is a violation of trust or authority. So what are the warning signs? Child sexual abuse isn't always easy to spot. The perpetrator could be someone you've known for a long time or trust, which makes it even harder to notice. But there are some signs, and these signs are usually something in the school district that maybe the nurse is the one that's going to spot these signs. Bleeding, bruising, and swelling, bloody, torn, and stained underclothes, difficulty walking or sitting, frequent urinary and yeast infections, pain, itching, and burning in the genital area. The behavioral signs are changes in hygiene, such as refusing to bathe and bathing excessively. They develop phobias. They exhibit signs of depression and post-traumatic stress disorder. They express suicidal thoughts, especially in adolescence. They have trouble in school, such as absences or drop in grades. Smart kid, and then all of a sudden the grades begin to drop. There's a reason. Inappropriate knowledge of sexual behaviors. You know, it's amazing that sometimes you talk to these little 6th graders and they know about sex. And it's like, I mean, how do they know this stuff? You know? Or even elementary kids. Nightmares or bedwetting. They're overly protective and concerned for siblings or assume the caretaker role because they don't want the same thing to happen to their siblings. You know, they've been abused, they want to take care of their siblings. They return to regressive behaviors such as thumb sucking, or they run away from home or school, or they self-harm themselves. You've seen the slashers where they cut their wrist. Or they shrink away and seems threatened by physical contact. So you try to touch them and they kind of nudge away from you. So what is human trafficking? That was sexual abuse. So what is human trafficking? Human trafficking is a modern day slavery. It is a scourge that exists across the entire globe. It is a horrific crime that hides in plain sight. And unless you know what to look for, and unless you understand what you are seeing, you may miss it. Human trafficking is the exploitation of another person for labor, domestic servitude, or commercial sexual activity by force, fraud, or coercion. So what are the signs of human trafficking? They're always on their phone. Why do you think they're always on their phone? Because they're always talking to the person that's controlling them. They're getting directions from them. They sleep with their phone. They don't come home at night. They're coming home in different clothes than when they left. They're wearing clothes that you did not buy them. New tattoos, possibly cherries, roses, dollar signs, and crowns. Don't ask me why, because I don't know why those particular tattoos, but I did this training in another district, and one of the board members was a police officer. And he says, yes, that's exactly right. You know, we've seen that, I mean, as a police officer, I'm sure they see a lot. And he says, we've seen that on some kids, you know, and that's what it means. So it's that underground connection, I guess. Using words that are indicative of the life, commercial sex, exchange for sex for things of value, a place to sleep, money, food, or a cell phone. What are the signs of human trafficking continued? They have a sudden change in fashion. They start dressing more provocative. They have a sudden negative change in grades. Always exhausted, they're always tired, they sleep in class all the time. Excessive crying, or they're depressed. Expression feelings of self-hate or worthlessness. They begin to act secretive, defensive to questions. and they're unable to say where they were or have been, and will not disclose any information about who their friends are because they've been threatened, right? They've been threatened. Don't say anything. They will not look you in the eye. They're having significantly older boyfriend or girlfriend, right? A lot of adults you do not know in their social media. I don't know how many of you still have children, but or have children that have Facebook and all that stuff. You wonder about that. Who are their friends on social media? They have multiple STIs and STDs. They have a sudden poor hygiene and odors that indicative of a urinary tract infection. Is being controlled by another person. They are no longer going out with their friends. They don't have any friends anymore because they're being controlled. And it's sad for these kids. To whom should these activities be reported? In a school district, all suspicious activities of this nature should be reported to the superintendent. All school district personnel have an obligation to report any possible misconduct to Child Protective Services. And typically, the first person that receives such information is the individual to report. If the alleged perpetrator is someone from outside the school system, Child Protective Services and possible local police will take over the investigation. If the alleged perpetrator is a school employee, Child Protective Services and the local school district will take over the investigation at the discretion of the superintendent. And that's part of the new bills, Senate Bill 1476, that you all saw this past legislative update.
So if it's an employee, you're involved with police?
I'm sorry?
If it's an employee, the police are not involved?
If it's a school district, well, the superintendent will say, okay, let's get the school district and police to investigate. But it's the superintendent that makes that decision.
We don't have police.
And in the school district, then she can report it. CPS will probably report to the city police.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the decision of the superintendent under Senate Bill 1476.
1476.
Okay, maltreatment. What is child maltreatment? It is a behavior towards a child that is outside the norms of conduct and entails substantial risk of causing physical or emotional harm. There are 4 types of maltreatment: neglect, physical abuse, sexual abuse, and psychological. And in some cases, children may suffer from more than one of these types. And believe me, unfortunately, I've seen children that have suffered from 2 or 3 of these. The definition of each type of maltreatment: neglect, omission in care that may result in a significant harm or the risk of significant harm, and is characterized by the failure of a parent or caregiver to provide the child's basic needs. Physical abuse, non-accidental physical injury that is inflicted by a parent, a caregiver, or other person who has responsibility for the child. Psychological, also known as emotional abuse, is repeated pattern of parental or caregiver behavior that communicates to the child that he or she is worthless, unloved, unwanted, or endangered. Any questions about any of those? Right? Okay, the last part is gifted and talented programs. This is not mandated by legislative law, but it is in the gifted and talented state plan. Okay? The Texas State Plan for the Education of Gifted and Talented Students has an indicator, professional learning. All personnel involved in the planning, creation, delivery, and administration of services to gifted and talented students possess the knowledge required to develop and provide differentiated programs and services. Section 5.10 of this indicator, it says local district boards of trustees are trained to ensure accountability based on the Texas State Plan for the Education of the Gifted and Talented Student. So what is your definition of gifted and talented? Let me ask anybody here, what's your definition of gifted and talented? What do you think of when somebody says, we have a gifted and talented program?
A child that exceeds all expectations and just is finishing work like way ahead of schedule and is striving to get ahead and I need more and the teacher is trained to recognize that this child is just need either move up a grade or it needs more challenging tasks to complete.
Okay.
That's my
Anybody else?
I consider Gifted and Talented program to be some program that's more rigorous, more challenging than the normal curriculum.
Okay.
And my experience with students that were in programs like that was they have an ability to be leaders. They take the initiative and they're very excellent mentors. Or you can use them to help other students when you're having you want to work with a certain group of youngsters. You can have them help you teach a lesson or something,
right.
Whatever, because they, like everybody said, they do understand or have better understanding of what you're doing. And the challenge is just to keep them engaged in activities, because a lot of times you're at a certain level, and if you're not taking care of their requirements, it can be very disruptive
Think of a teacher that has 30 students in a classroom and they've got maybe 4 or 5 GT students, to keep the GT engaged and to work with the other groups of students can become very challenging, as Mr. Cuellar mentioned. So yes. Anything else? There's one thing we didn't hear, and so what is your definition of gifted and talented? There is not one definition of gifted and talented. There are many when it comes to servicing the student in public schools. Gifted in leadership, as Mr. Cuellar mentioned, possessing the natural ability to influence others, possessing the skills, interpersonal skills, relationships, demonstrated, for example, by outstanding abilities in such activities as student government. Your student council president, and I'm thinking of a high school, or even a middle school. In elementary, that child they're just that natural leader. It comes out on them. Then there's the creatively gifted, possessing outstanding imagination and thinking ability, innovative or creative reasons ability in problem solving, and high attainment in original and creative thinking. Then there's probably the one that I think we got the most discussion here, gifted in specific academic fields, possessing superior ability or potential in a specific course of study, such as English language arts, reading, math, science, or social studies. You can be gifted in math, and that's it, right? Or you can be gifted in science and nothing else. You can be in special ed and gifted, right? So individual students are gifted in different things. And then the last one is artistically gifted. We didn't think about that. Those in band, those that are in choir, they just have that beautiful voice. I mean, that's a gifted child. Artistically gifted, possessing outstanding ability in the visual and or performing arts. I'm sure you all have one-act plays. I mean, you've got that child that can act and, man, could probably win an Oscar, right? I mean, just a great kid. The state definition. Gifted and talented students means a child or youth who performs at or shows the potential for performing at a remarkably high level of accomplishment when compared to others of the same age, experience, or environment, and who exhibits high performance capability in intellectual, creative, and artistic areas. They possess an unusual capacity for leadership, and they excel in academic fields. Now, this is the requirement of the district. Every district shall adopt a process for identifying and serving gifted and talented students in the district, and shall establish a program for those students in each grade level. A district may establish a shared service arrangement program with one or more other districts. Each school district shall adopt a policy regarding the use of funds to support the district's program for gifted and talented students. Now, the sad thing about this is the state just took away that money from school districts, right? But you should still allot some money for it. That's still a requirement. Each school district shall annually certify to the commissioner that the district has established a program for gifted and talented students as required by this subchapter, and that the program is consistent with the state plan developed under section 29.123. If the commissioner determines that a school district has failed to comply with the subsection for a school year, the commissioner shall reduce the total amount of funding within which the district is entitled under the Chapter 48 for that school year. So they don't give you money for it, but if you don't implement a plan, they're going to take away money from you. So it's very critical that, that as a district that you do have a gifted and talented program. And then it gives you the formula down in the bottom. Amount equal to the basic allotment and multiplied by the product of, and you can see the formula down in the bottom. So what should the program look like in a school district? School districts shall develop written policies on student identification that are approved by the local board of trustees and disseminated to parents. The policies should include the following: a screening and selection process, an assessment measure collected from multiple sources. They should ensure that all students in the district have the opportunity to participate. A committee with at least 3 educators who have been trained and gifted and talented involved in the selection process of students. And provisions must include furloughs, reassessment, exiting from the program, and transfer of students and appeals of district decisions. Professional development of school districts should ensure that teachers who provide gifted and talented instruction must have a minimum of 30 hours of staff development in the area of gifted and talented. Teachers must receive 6 hours of staff development in the area of gifted and talented every year. In administrators, and this is new, this last one, administrators and counselors who have authority for the program decisions must have a minimum of 6 hours of professional development. Student services. School districts shall provide an array of learning opportunities for gifted and talented students in kindergarten through grade 12 and shall inform parents of the opportunities. Options may include, they don't have to, but they may include instructional patterns, may include enabling students to work together as a group, to work with other students, or to work independently. A continuum of experiences that leads to the development of advanced level products and performances. In school, and when possible, out-of-school options relevant to the students' areas of strength that are available during this entire school year, and opportunities to accelerate in the areas of their strengths. Parental engagement. A meeting with parents and community to gain input on the program and assessment procedure should be held annually. Opportunity for parents to participate in an association of gifted and talented advocacy group is provided to parents and committee members, and parents are informed of all opportunities for gifted and talented students, and products and achievements of gifted and talented students are shared with the community. And the video is not working, so, oh, it is working. It's kind of a cheesy one. It's from the States, so.
Hello, Mythbusters. Oh, yes, Dr. Grasmick. Yes, ma'am. The 10 Myths and Truths of GT Education. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. We'll get right on it. We got one!
Hey! What you doing?
For decades, myths related to GT education have distorted the perceptions of not only what gifted students need in the classroom, but also what they can offer the nation now and in the future.
The National Association for Gifted Children has compiled decades of research that dispels these myths. Join us as we present the research that the truth supports. The 10 Myths and Truths of Gifted Education.
Mr. Policymaker, ready? 5, 4, 3, 2, go.
These are tough economic times, and we policymakers must set priorities. Everyone knows gifted students don't need help. They'll do just fine on their own.
Hey, if I were your star athlete, would you expect me to train for the Olympics without a coach? I need the guidance and support of great teachers, just like all kids do. I'm not bragging, but sometimes in a regular grade level class, I don't learn anything new until January. I get bored and frustrated, and I just hate school. And that's when I start to tune out and my grades drop. And that's definitely not doing fine.
As a school principal, I set the goal for the teachers to challenge every student, so the gifted kids will be just fine in a regular classroom.
I know my teachers try to challenge me, but sometimes they just don't understand what it is I need. And even when they do understand, it's hard for them to make changes to the regular curriculum. I've even heard teachers say, we just haven't had any training in teaching students like you.
We teachers need to keep gifted students in regular classes in order to provide role models and challenges for other students.
The truth is, all kids need to work with peers that challenge them. I know I do. But the best challenge for me is just within my grasp, not far beyond it. The other kids don't see me as a role model. They just say, it's easy for you. You're smart.
As a parent, I believe that all children are gifted. It's not fair to label only some students that way.
Wow, I sure don't want to take anything away from other kids. But in athletics, everyone accepts there's some really talented kids who make varsity team. I mean, we wouldn't take away the Super Bowl, would we? We love to watch those athletes play. Why couldn't we think about academics in the same way?
As a school counselor, I'm aware that gifted programs often employ accelerated placement options, and acceleration can be socially harmful to gifted students.
When I was in 3rd grade, I remember feeling really out of place in school and began to act out my frustration. My parents and teachers met, and soon I was placed in an advanced 4th grade class. I felt really happy with the students that shared my interests. My grades began to pick up, and soon no one looked at me as younger or different. We were all on the same level.
As a university professor, I can tell you that history clearly demonstrates that gifted education programs are elitist.
It wasn't until I entered middle school that my district started gifted programs. Maybe we didn't have the money, or maybe people didn't think that there were gifted kids in my school. All I know is that I was never challenged in elementary school, and there were kids there just like me too. Our gifted programs aren't about status. It's about people finding their place. I think it's elitist not to have a gifted program because you're making assumptions that some kids' education is less important than others.
I'm the teacher of a student that can't be gifted. She gets poor grades.
My parents and teachers are always telling me how smart I am. So why is it that I can't achieve more? I wish I knew why. Sometimes I'm afraid to stand out, other times I'm afraid to fail. So I just don't try anymore. I wish I knew someone who could break me out of this cycle.
As special education chair, our department has decided that this child can't be gifted. He has disability.
In elementary school, I was in this special pull-out program for my reading and writing problems. I didn't think anyone would have considered me for a gifted program. But in the 4th grade, my teacher noticed that while I struggled in reading, I was her top student in mathematics. So she recommended me for her gifted math class. I'm thankful that I get to focus on my special abilities while still receiving help for my learning disability.
As curriculum coordinator, our office has gifted and talented programs.
We have advanced placement courses in high school.
As a student, I enjoy my college-level coursework in my advanced placement classes. These courses are for everyone who wants to work hard and get into a great college. I wish so that I didn't have to wait until high school to be so challenged. As much as I enjoy AP, I still long for opportunities to explore my own personal passion, which happens to be aeronautics. That's why it is so important for our gifted department to allow us to work with a mentor as well as provide opportunities to do our own research. That's what's really going to help me develop my talent.
All of us on the school board know we should do more for our gifted students. But these are tough economic times, and gifted education requires abundant resources.
Begin with the end in mind. Just begin. Begin by believing in us. We are your future world leaders, inventors, artists, teachers. Begin by believing in us. We don't ask for more than our share, only that which meets our needs. Your commitment to us has no cost in dollars, yet without commitment, dollars are misspent. Begin by believing in us. Just begin.
Any questions?
What state provided those videos?
What state? Texas? That came from TA. Like the old driver's ed.
How much of the gifted and talented information is available for public information?
All of it. Yeah, I mean it's a program. Just
names.
Names of students that are in the program? No, that would be covered in the FERPA.
Right.
No.
It's just the criteria that you, as a
Yeah,
parent, that you can
Huh?
you can check to see what criteria your son or daughter can meet to be in the different gifted programs.
And once you get into that program, the point that was of interest is that some excel in some areas more than others.
Right.
So where do you accommodate that strength versus where they may be a little weak in another?
We see that's a challenge for our district.
Right.
You know, to be, you know, you saw the special ed student that says, hey, my math, I'm in a math gifted and talented class, but everything else is regular. Depending on how you set up your gifted and talented program, and that can be accomplished, because you know, if you departmentalize, then you develop a GT math class, and that's where those kids go into.
Well, I think what we have now is if you're in one, you're in everything, right?
In some cases, at the lower grade levels.
Yeah, like in middle school.
We have the Quest program, and then we have the Advanced Academics Academy for the middle school right now.
And the reason I bring this up is because as a teacher, this thing about the gifted and talented, you think that they're going to be good in something that you're teaching, and when they don't meet those expectations, you start to question, well, what are you doing in this program?
Right.
So we have to be careful how we address this, and my question is, once they're in, how are we going to identify their strengths and then what
Well,
they need
they
to
are
do?
identified by the assessments that are given to them.
And it covers everything?
Well, I'm not sure what the assessments look like, but I would think they test for everything, and then the scores, individual scores, will show where they're gifted.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Correct. What instrument?
Am I correct, Dr. Canales?
What instrument do we use for GT, like in elementary? I guess Abel would know.
Yeah, April would know. And Samantha.
Samantha, we
Oh,
hired
yeah, that's
a
right.
GT coordinator, what, 2-3
Maybe
years ago?
if you were to give us a presentation, Doc, on the gifted and
Actually,
talented.
have Samantha,
Samantha?
so that way they can, what criteria they use to for the different areas.
My
what
point is,
tests.
am I at liberty to talk about my own grandkids? One's a year older than another. She qualified for a couple, the other one didn't meet expectations.
Right.
Yet, I just got a report that she scored a 100 on her benchmark math. So as I'm watching this, I'm thinking, okay, you know, how can we honor this and be fair to the student and make them feel that they're in something, that, you know, because once you're in those programs, everybody thinks you're smart, you know, you're smart, and it can be a challenging experience.
I think that's a perfect opportunity for your GT coordinator to come and do a presentation.
Yeah.
You know, so that you get the big picture of how it's done here in Weslaco.
And we've had the presentation, I'm gonna guess about 1.5 years, maybe 2 years ago, Doc?
When we started I think we started the middle school
program. That you were pulling some teachers from the elementary schools to go to the middle schools and
at Central. At Central.
At Central, right? They go to
Central.
Yeah.
They're both there.
Right. Are they still doing that?
We're still doing things like that. We can definitely
Well, folks, I hope you got some good information tonight.
Sure did. It was great.
Hopefully it was helpful. You know, I think you guys are doing an outstanding job as a board, as a district, and you've got some great leadership here. So I think I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Canales. I think she's got another part of the presentation.
For the last part of this training, discussed this at the board meeting on Monday. So these are the local governance, section B from update 114. I just wanted to highlight a few pages on here. Have tabbed them for you. And I'm going to get out my notes on this. So the first one, the yellow tab, which is on page 36. We went ahead and I put an asterisk on the item that I want to discuss, and we went ahead and put the Senate bill or House bill that it relates to. So the very first one is public information on private device. When we all went to the Region 1 training, Mr. Vidal, you presented on that one, on Senate Bill 944. It was just about the current or even a former board member or employee of a district who maintains public information on a privately owned device shall forward or transfer the public information to the district or a district server to be preserved as provided by government code. And number 2, preserve the public information in its original form in a backup or archive and on the privately owned device for the time described under the code, the government code. So that's a piece that's part of BBI legal now.
So what does that mean? Is that referencing phone?
We have to archive them. So if you're a board member, a former board member, and you used your phone, even if it's privately owned, right? You have to forward, we have to ask, we have to build a system to get that information. You should go off the board, or if we're going to do it on an annual basis, we have to develop that. So those are things that we'll be working with our legal counsel on how we're going to do that. Some other districts, I think Mr. Pettis has mentioned, went ahead and just bought phones for all the board members. That way, when you're not a board member anymore, you're using that phone, just turn the phone in. So we're going to have to finalize how we're going to do that. But that's new.
Yeah, that is.
So, and then the next tab is, what's the next one? Let me see more. Red, is that red?
48.
Red on page 48. This one, sorry, it's on page 47. And it is the asterisk again in Senate Bill 494. If we have an emergency situation like we did when we had the flood of 2018 and we need to call a meeting right away, we only need to give a 1-hour notice. So they've really narrowed that time, maybe because of, the natural disasters that have been occurring in the state. So it used to be 2 hours and now it's just 1 hour. So that's just to call your attention to that. The next one is it purple or green?
Purple.
It's only when there's a disaster?
Yeah, here it describes when we can call the emergency. So if you look at that, and I'll give you a chance to look at it, it talks about it's an urgent public necessity. We need to take action on the emergency or necessity right away. And then it does talk about some of the things like an emergency or urgent public necessity exists only if immediate action is required because of imminent threat to the public. reasonable unforeseeable situation, fire, flood, earthquake, hurricane, tornado, wind, rain, snowstorm, power failure, transportation failure, interruption of communication facilities, an epidemic, a riot, civil disturbance, an attack. So it lists some of the things.
Okay.
So then on page 53, this is BE legal. This is tied to Senate Bill 1640, where it's prohibited series of communications, and it's talking about Board of Trustees now committing an offense if they knowingly engage in at least one communication among a series of communications that each occur outside of a meeting authorized by the Open Meetings Act, and that concern that concerns an issue with the jurisdiction of the board in which the members engaging in the individual communications constitute fewer than a quorum of members, but the members engaging in the series of communications constitute a quorum of members. I'm going to have to read that several times.
You've heard the term walking quorum?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Basically, you cannot have 4 board members outside of a board meeting talking about or taking business, discussing business.
Right.
Okay, so that's that one. That's Senate Bill 1640. On the next page, there should be another one. This is BE local now. And if you notice in the very bottom on page 54, notice to board members, that goes back to Senate Bill 494, and that's at 1 hour. It used to be 2 hours, and this again is for emergency board meetings that we may require because of some of those items that I read earlier. And then I don't think there's, okay, the last section is BD legal that I wanted to cover. And it's public comment, and then I want to cover local because we will need some feedback from you on the local so that we can inform Caspian how we want to cover it, okay? So the public comment of board shall allow each member of the public who desires to address the board regarding an item on an agenda for an open meeting of the board to address the board regarding the item of the meeting before or during the board's consideration of the item. We kind of revised the public comments so that we are okay with us. So I want to draw our attention, knowing that, to the next page, page 59. And you should have it, you should see some blue, do you see the blue font on that? Those are the decision points we need to make. So public comment, at regular board meetings, the board shall permit comment regardless of whether the topic is an item on the agenda posted with the notice of the meeting. And that's been our standard. We just have public comments and people come, sometimes it's on the agenda, sometimes it's not. There's a concern, that a parent may have about something going on, or somebody wants to, talk about a program or even give kudos to staff. That's happened before. But for special meetings, all other board meetings, public comments shall be limited to items on the agenda posted with a notice of the meeting. So the decision point is, do we continue that practice at special meetings and workshops that the public comments are only limited to the agenda, as opposed to the regular board meeting where we keep it open to anything you want to make a comment about?
What have we done in this past for special board meetings?
There was no
public comments.
No public comments.
So
in the past, and I think we should just keep it on items on the agenda.
Yeah, I agree.
That's up to local policy. I mean, that's
right. According to this one, I'm going to get out the explanatory notes so I can have it right here. According to this one, the decision points, or do you want to limit public comments to agenda items only? They even said at all meetings, okay? But I think our practice for regular board meetings has been we leave it open, right? And that's what y'all want to continue.
Right.
At the regular board meetings.
Correct.
So do we want to limit it just to agenda items for special board meetings and workshops? Because not even workshops.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So y'all okay just limiting to the agenda for the workshops? Okay. So we'll let Casby know. And then the next.
Now, do we need to act on that? I guess.
Well, you all giving us the feedback right now. You all need to act on it on a board meeting, right? So we're going to take notes, notes, okay? But those are the decision points. When we take the second, or this will probably take 3 readings before you approve it, that's going to be a point to know. But okay, so yeah. So there's no action on it right now. You act on it in a conscious discussion. It's just feedback, right?
And normally those changes will be in blue. right? Like whenever you present, they'll be in blue, the changes that we're gonna approve.
Right, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Canales, but this is, of course, a recommendation from TASB, so this is gonna remain as is, right? On the local one?
Well, we'll get with that.
Because-
If the board takes action, then we'll get with TASB. But for y'all to know when it comes up, you have to decide keeping the regular as is, and you can limit the special called board meetings and workshops to just the items on the agenda.
Correct.
Okay, and then the next one is about the time. So right now we have except as permitted by this clause in the board's procedures on public comment, and individuals' comments to the board shall not exceed 5 minutes per meeting. So that's something to think about it. There's some places, because now you have to allow everybody who wants to speak to speak. You don't, you can't say, yeah, like join them, you can't join them and have a representative. There's 5 people speak the same topic. You can't say pick a representative. You have to allow everybody to speak.
Oh.
Okay, you can't have a time limit, and it tells the board president what they can do and not do with that. But then you can consider reducing the amount of time. Some boards allow 3 minutes for public to speak. Some 5, for each comment. So that's just something to think about.
Well, if it's a
And we'll
group,
see.
if it depends what the size of the group is, I probably would recommend 3 minutes versus when it's just individual.
And it
Yeah, I
gives
think
you
we
some
should go-
authority to change
I
it.
think one thought we could do is if we can, is go with like 5 minutes on topics on the agenda and 3 minutes on just other than. I don't know if that's possible.
Well,
Mr. Netta, you used to keep the time for how long do people normally take?
Not more than 5 minutes. Some take 3 or 4.
Okay.
Now, like you said, if it's a big group, I mean, do we have to specify pretty much in our policy if it's
that's
10 or
what
more, then 3 minutes, or if it's...
Right.
And it gives you some, one of the other policies, and I can get that, it's going to be in here.
Okay.
It gives you some
I doubt
authority
we
to
could get
decide.
10 people that will talk 5 minutes because it starts being repetitive. Everybody's saying the same
That's why we
thing.
said if it's a big group, we would limit it 2 or 3 minutes.
So it's just things you want to think
I
about.
think and Tasby can guide you on this, but I think whatever you set as a time is you can't change it.
Right. Correct.
Once you set the time,
Right.
that's it.
But there's certain conditions when you can. When I was reading it, and I'd have to pull up the law, there are certain conditions when you can change.
Well, there's this paragraph here that says that the board president can limit it to a minimum 1 minute on the next paragraph here.
Yeah.
Minimum
Yeah.
or maximum?
It says that no individual shall be given less than 1 minute to make comment.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you have to at least give them a minute.
Yeah, so I guess my understanding of this is 100 people walk in and they say we want each one to speak, then Mr. Neto can say, okay, then we're reducing it to 1 minute each.
Correct.
That's my interpretation of
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
It says when necessary for effective meeting management. Well, we don't really usually have, 2 or 3 people, maybe per meeting that gives a comment.
I think the most we've ever had was 2. When
had
you were
I
more,
know some districts have 2 different sign-in sheets when they walk in.
right.
Are you going to sign up for an agenda item, or you're just going to do a public comment? And they sign up on, so I don't know, that's something you
I
might
think
want to consider.
when the district had proposed maybe FDR closing down, that's when we
yes.
had a lot that one
That's right.
time. Ooh,
That's
yeah,
what Mo,
there was a
you
lot.
were the president then. So we had several.
Yeah.
That's right. And
We
Mo
had
gave 'em 30 minutes each.
Here for 2 days.
Mo gave 5. We gave him 5.
Here for 2 days. But 5 is what we've been giving.
Right.
But,
But if it's a big group, we'll probably go down.
and I guess the
2
other,
or 3 minutes.
and I guess the other thing we can check, and we probably can check, I don't know if it has to be the same amount of time for all types of meetings, or could it change,
I think 5 minutes for an individual person would be sufficient.
Well, it's something that we need to address, so get us all the information we need to know so that we can make our decision.
So, and then you have the rest of them if you want to, and I know you also need a copy of the entire binder.
Is this
but
reading
these
for
are
the
yours.
holidays?
It's whatever you want. It's reading before you go to bed, it's reading in the morning when you wake up and have your coffee, it's reading
I
at lunch.
already have a book that I have to read during the holidays. Brain Mindset, I think that's it. I think that's the book I'm reading for the holidays.
But Dr. Garcia and I just wanted to provide these to y'all today.
Okay.
That's just That's just the, your section, the board member section.
Is that everything?
This is everything right now. Double-sided.
Mr.
Yeah, that's just a government.
It's like reading Game of Thrones, you know?
Yeah.
Mr. Vidal, do you want to, do we need to do anything else?
No, no, I mean, we're done. Again, I want to thank you all, and hopefully you got some good information, and continue doing the good job you all are doing.
Great.
Thank you very much for coming down here.
This is a workshop, is that?
Right.
Training, annual training.
Did everybody sign in? Because we're going to award some certificates for
Right.
3 hours
Yes,
of
we
training.
did.
Okay.
Now, do we need to call for public comment or questions if it's a workshop?
You did at the beginning.
We did at the
You
beginning.
did at the beginning.
At the beginning.
But that was for anybody sign up for public comments.
Right.
But being a workshop, we need to also ask, does anybody have any questions, any comments?
Do you have any questions?
Sergio?
Do I have?
Any of you, the board members?
I do want to thank Dr. Garcia for he's taken up the whole policy and a time when it's a lot of fun because the binder's that big. And,
This is the first time that we get something as extensive.
I did
Right,
notice
long
there was
time.
a doctor right there in front of us.
There is a Dr. Garcia.
What's that?
When was that official?
It's official. I graduate on Saturday.
Hey, congratulations. It's wonderful.
Maybe the next board meeting.
And you doctored the house.
Thank you.
Yes.
Doctor. We got 3 doctors here right now.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's right.
You're a doctor?
Okay, thanks for reminding me though.
Well, thank you so much for everything that you do for our students, our staff, the community.
All right.
You know, a lot of people appreciate it.
Everybody be able
We
to,
all do.
at the special board meeting on the 19th?
The 19th, the special board meeting.
Also 5:30.
5:30, right?
We also have
Yes.
the, we also have
Merry
the
Christmas to you too.
administrators.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very
When
much.
is that? I didn't-
Thank you so much, thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Thank
What were
you.
you saying?
And I'll be in contact with you.
Okay. Good.
Always
Thank you
enjoy
so
your
much.
presence.
Merry
Thank you very
Christmas.
much.
Yes, sir.
Merry Christmas. Thank you so much.
We have the, on Tuesday, I think it's Tuesday.
Next Tuesday?